All right, joining us this morning is one of Hale's probably most famous sporting alumni, Dane Haylett-Petty. Now, Dane has played for the Wallabies now for quite some time, and Western Force, and now with the Melbourne Rebels, with a lot of stops in the middle there. I'm joined by Steve McFarlane, our long-term first 15 coach, who also coached Dane. So, Dane, welcome. I know you're back in Perth with the break in the season, but thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Excellent. So I'm just going to throw over to Steve. He's going to ask you a few questions, and then we'll have a little bit of a track through your career, and then a bit of advice you can give to the boys listening.
That sounds good.
Dane, obviously you were born in South Africa, and then I think when you were about 10, you decided, or you and your family move across. What were the reasons behind making a move to Australia?
Yeah, I obviously I moved when I was quite young. A lot of fond memories in South Africa. It was quite a small family, but very close with our cousins, and just spending every holiday together, and a very happy childhood. But there were definitely a few incidents in South Africa that I remember, and probably didn't realise how, I suppose, dangerous that they were at the time. As a kid, nothing really phases you, but probably a bit more stressful. And Steve, I think everyone in South Africa knows, have friends or family that have been affected by crime. So I remember once when I was younger playing soccer, and some gunshots kind of went off, and there were sort of rival gangs having a shootout while we were at soccer practice. Another time, the school bell rang, and everyone had to dive under their desks as there's more gunshots throughout the school. And then my dad got held up at gunpoint, and that was probably while he was paying his employees' wages, and that was probably like the final straw for my parents, and they decided it was time for a new life, time to come out to Australia. And to be honest, it's probably the greatest gift they could ever have given us. This country has offered my family so many opportunities. And I feel really privileged to be able to represent Australia for the last couple of years, wearing that gold jersey. But I feel it was a great decision on my parents' behalf, and us kids are really thankful for that.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously playing soccer. What were some of the other sports that you played, be it at school or be in the community whilst you were growing up?
So I only picked up rugby when I moved to Australia. Funnily enough, South Africa is rugby mad country, and I still remember I was very young, but that's going to one of the games at the '95 World Cup, and then South Africa winning and everyone going nuts. And my mum pulled out some old homework I did when I was younger, and my dream was always to be a professional sportsman, and originally was to play for South Africa, but obviously times changed, and now very proud Australian. But I played a lot of cricket, a lot of hockey, a little bit of soccer, did a bit of athletics and swimming, and then started rugby, and really fell in love with rugby at Hale School when I first moved over.
I think from my rugby point of view, I know certainly as coaches, we were certainly aware that the AFL boys might have had their eyes on you, just looking at your aerial skills, that you have today. So if you think back to house sport at Hale, it's quite a unique system that we have. We used to play every Wednesday, and it still continues. What house were you in, and any sort of memories you had from your days playing house sport?
Yeah, so I loved house sport. That was one of my favourite days of the week. So I was in Haynes House, and I was pretty lucky. I had quite a few of my very good friends in Haynes House too. So we all kind of picked different sports and played together. And played cricket, but then we played a bit of touch rugby back then. And I actually loved playing. It's the only time I've ever had a chance to play a little bit of AFL, and loved the opportunity to do that. I know one memory that I have, and I've never been allowed to live down, is Al Rivera always reminds me. I was playing first 11 cricket, and he'd never really played cricket, but he got me out playing house cricket, and he still reminds me to this day. So that was a bit of an embarrassing.
Yeah, I don't think you're the first or the last to have that little bit of kind of humility poured on you at house sport, Dane. It happens to this day as well.
Yeah, good.
Obviously, your rugby career at Hale. I know you were part of a very, good, strong cohort, from year 8 through to your time in the first 15. But in your journey there, is there any a particular game or victory or that sort of sticks out in your mind in your time playing for Hale?
I was very lucky to, obviously, thanks to you, Steve, and Rob Barra and all the rugby coaches, you set up such an amazing environment, like a structured environment for us to learn, and we were very successful. I don't think we lost a PSA game. So it was pretty special, and it really set me up for my career. I wouldn't say there's one victory necessarily, but my fondest memories from rugby are definitely playing rugby with all my best friends. A lot of my best friends still today are those guys that I've played rugby with and for years and years through Hale. So those are definitely my fondest memories playing together.
And then obviously rugby and cricket was one part of your journey at Hale, and obviously there was time spent in the classroom. Any sort of memories or of teachers that influenced you inside the classroom?
Well, I think definitely I'd say, I don't know about in the classroom, but in terms of where I've ended up, and I had no idea what I wanted to do when I finished school, but I'd say you and Rob definitely influenced me, having gone down the rugby route. Like I said, that sporting environment that you'd set up set me up and led me into the job that I've done for the last 13 years, and probably coming to the end of it and maybe start looking for another one. But yeah.
Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the Wallabies a little later on. But, going back to your time at Hale, and you think the guys that you played with, who would be the best team player that you would have, played with during your time at Hale, and why? What attributes did he have?
I'd probably say Justin Turner. He was an amazing rugby player, but it was he had a work ethic like no one else. He had a great professional rugby career, which was cut short, and I've got no doubt that he would have ended up playing for the Wallabies as well. But he just kind of got to worked hard, and always put the team first. So I learned a lot from Justin, and learned a lot of lessons from him, I suppose. Yeah.
And obviously after Hale, you speak of your rugby journey, which, I look at it and it's just gone so quickly, but it's also taken you to really different places. Starting off as a young guy out of school playing for the Force, but you obviously, aside from Aussie under-20s and Australian sevens, you had a couple of years at Biarritz and some time in Japan. And a lot of guys sort of do that travel, be it to Biarritz or Japan at the end of the career, but you did it quite early on. What was the reason for you to follow that path, sort of the other way around, if you want to call it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose that's the lucky thing with rugby. Very privileged being a world game. I've been lucky enough to travel around the world, live in different places, have amazing experiences and make all sorts of friends in different countries. I suppose that choice to leave quite early, I finished rugby. I started rugby, the day after my last exam at Hale. So straight into professional environments, and spent 3 years sort of grinding away, attempting to play Super Rugby, and sort of failed in those first couple of years. I played about 9 games, never really got going, and ended up, I just felt like I was a professional trainer, training all the time. And at the time, if you weren't playing Super Rugby, there wasn't really a level down in Australia to keep honing your skills. So we'd have long pre-seasons of training. And just wasn't really enjoying myself at the time. A lot of my friends were at uni for those first few years, having probably the best years of their life, and I was at home, getting ready for the next day of training, grinding away, and I just kind of lost my love for the game for a little while there. And one of the Aussie coaches at Biarritz at the time gave me a ring and just said, "Do you want to come over?" He came over and never left because he loved Biarritz. It's one of the best places in Europe, and he can guarantee me game time. They play whatever it was, 36 games a year, when Super Rugby was maybe 15. And so I just saw a great opportunity, not just from rugby point of view, but an opportunity to try something new in a new country, and travel at the same time, and just sort of enjoy myself a little bit. And so I headed for France, and I didn't know. It was probably, I only realised when I got there how big a decision it was. Landing in France. Not knowing a person, not speaking any French, so it was pretty daunting. But it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. I had to grow up very fast, and I made friends that became sort of family, like a family away from home, and then played a totally different style of rugby, playing rugby week in, week out, and with some of the best players. We had a very good team at the time. We had a lot of French internationals. We had some international smaller. I think we had probably 14 internationals, and we were doing really well. So, it was just it turned out to be the right decision, but it came off the back of a sort of failure and a loss of love for the game, and sort of fell back in love with the game when I got to France.
You hear a lot of stories about French rugby and the French clubs, which I'm sure you'd have many to tell, but just the sort of difference in rugby. You've obviously now played in the top 14. You played Japanese rugby and a good experience of Super Rugby. What would you see as sort of the major differences between sort of those three experiences and the kind of rugby that's played?
Sure. I think so. I played 3 years of Super Rugby, which was fast, attacking, really entertaining rugby to start my career, and then I went over to France, and it was just a totally different style. The thing I liked about France is you get a little bit of that at the start of the season when it's summer, and also to finish the season when finals come around, it's the sun's back out, but then in the middle is a bit of a slog. A lot of you play in snow, you play in rain, you play in wind, and so you get forced to play different styles. You play teams from all over Europe who all play differently. And so I feel like I played a lot of rugby. I think I played 60 games in 3 years. And I feel like it really rounded out my game. I had to do a lot more kicking, a lot more catching. Your game management, you learn to sort of manage the game, because these are tight games where it's a kick to win. It's probably a lot closer to the style of test rugby that you play. And so you have to manage the game well and be smart about that. And, obviously learning from some of the best players in the world. So that was in Europe, a very, very different sort of style to Super Rugby. And then I headed off to Japan on my way home. I'd always wanted to have another crack at Super Rugby. I felt like there was unfinished business from the start of my career. And because I played a little bit of Aussie Sevens, I could never play for France. So I wanted to play against the best players in the world. I wanted to try and at least have a crack at playing international rugby. So I knew I was going to come home at some point. And I stopped off in Japan for 6 months on the way home. And it was off the back of my body falling apart in France. I'd been battling groin injuries over and over again. And I had groin surgery my last year in France, and decided that now was the right time to come home. And so I stopped off in Japan on the way for 6 months, and basically used it as an opportunity to rebuild my body. There's a lot of running in Japan. It's fast, attacking rugby, but doesn't take its toll on your body as much, not as physical. You're only allowed two foreigners on the field at once, so I would come off the bench often behind Mark Gerard and Kankowski, one of the South African guys, and so I could spend a lot of time in the gym, a lot of time rehabbing, and building my body back up, getting ready for Super Rugby. It was a perfect sort of stepping stone back into Super Rugby on the way home. So those are sort of the three different styles, and I suppose I benefited from playing all the different styles.
Before I hand over to Luke, just how have you found, obviously, a 5-year gap, I think it is, between yourself and Ross, and the two of you obviously playing together, something really special. I know there are a few brothers in some teams around the world, and have you enjoyed the mentoring role of your younger brother?
Yeah, it is very special. It's something I'm really enjoying, and I think we both feel like we're pretty lucky to be able to go to work together every single day, and sort of share the experiences, the highs and lows of the rugby roller coaster. I left for France at the age of 20 when he was 15, so I kind of missed 3 or 4 years of him growing up and finishing school, and while we'd come visit once a year, we missed a big chunk of time together, and so I really enjoyed coming back, and I suppose trying to mentor him a little bit without, I don't think he likes listening to his older brother too much, so I try give him little bits and pieces here and there, and not give him too much that he gets annoyed.
All good. So Dane, let's fast forward to international career. So 2016, in the mid-year window, you're picked by Michael Checker to make your Wallabies debut. Can you remember, the moment you almost got told, I imagine by Michael, that you're playing on Saturday, and what did you do following that?
To be honest, it's a little bit of a blur. I remember getting picked for my first camp, and us training pretty hard up on the Sunshine Coast, and really battling out for positions. I think we had a week's camp leading into it, and then getting changed in and out of the starting team. So I knew I was in the mix, and just hoping for an opportunity. Then I remember when he did announce the team, being a little bit shocked, very excited, and a little bit nervous. I spent the next few days kind of switching between being super excited about the weekend coming up and being really nervous about, will I be able to perform at the next level?
Okay.
And so it felt like a long week leading into that game, and the Saturday was probably even longer. We had an 8 o'clock game against England at Suncorp. So just kind of spent the day pacing around my room, just couldn't wait for it to start.
Okay.
I remember getting on the bus and thinking, have I forgot my boots? I hope I packed my boots. But which I had, which was good. But the minute I ran out, and that's kind of been the case for my whole career. You have the nerves throughout the week, but you just keep preparing the way you prepare, and trust that you'll be able to do the job on the weekend. And it's usually once I get out in the field for the warm-up that the nerves kind of start to go, and just get back to kind of doing what I love. And it was the same. So that week I'd actually been battling some groin tightness and with one of my adductors, which had been the case my whole career. But I wasn't going to tell them because I just wanted to play one test at the time. And,
it's amazing when you say about the nerves of making sure your boots are packed. That we get the same from kids here playing the first 15 the first game, or they play their first game at 8A's rugby. That same feeling of nerves probably that goes throughout all sport, doesn't it? When you just you hit that next level.
It does. Some things never change, and I've always been a little bit surprised. A lot of other boys will look very confident game day, but then you talk to them after and they're like, everyone has the same thoughts. Everyone kind of at times doubts themselves, at times stresses about performance. And then I suppose the big thing is, once you get out there and you just realise that you're doing the same thing that you've done for the last 10 years, and it's what you love, that you kind of let go and just play the game. Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in rugby for the Wallabies that some sports give out the cap before the game, like your baggy green, but the Wallabies give it out after your first test. Now, can you remember who gave you your Wallabies cap and what they might have said?
So I got it after the game. It was from our the president at the time, who always does the caps, but it's the same as a bit blurry. I was just so stoked to, at the time, my dream was just to play one test and to get that cap. So it was just such a surreal moment, and I had my family there, and my mates flew up, and so it was just, even though we lost, which was very disappointing against England, it was just a special moment. And then obviously push the boundaries and said, okay, now from there.
Yeah.
Can I play 2 games? Can I play 3 games?
Yeah, and up to 37 now, I think. So beyond the World Cup, we'll talk about the World Cup as we get towards the end, but Bledisloe is the trophy that, Australian rugby craves the most. You played New Zealand 7 times, and now there's probably hundreds of kids listening to this, and the question they'd want me to ask right now, what is it like facing the haka? And has there been any hakas where you've just caught a New Zealand absolutely staring at you in the middle of the face? What's it been like?
Yeah, so 6 or 7 times played the All Blacks and haven't had much luck against them. Obviously, one of the best sporting teams in the world. So it's always a great challenge. I think the intensity always goes up in those test matches. I've always found them more intense than the other ones. You just can't let go for a minute. But that haka, pretty special moment, especially the first time you see it. Pretty surreal watching it up close and like hearing how loud it is. And then I suppose after the first one, you get a little bit used to it. And I think I've always enjoyed just the whole start of the game, whether it's the All Blacks or other international teams with the anthems. And it's the only time you really notice the crowd and look at the crowd. And I try and soak up the energy as much as possible and enjoy the moment before things kick off.
Yeah, and now as an outsider watching the Wallabies sing the anthem, I don't think there's another team in Australia that shows as much passion, particularly during, while singing the anthem. Was that something that Michael Checker focused on at all? Or was that an internal playing thing, or am I just not watching closely enough? Because it just seems that, all 23 of you, sing it at a high voice, like you trying to show how much you love playing for Australia.
It's not a conscious thing. I don't Checker's never really talked about that. Well, he's quite an emotional guy and loves getting the boys fired up. He's never really talked about the anthem, but he often talks about pride in the jersey and the pride of playing for your country. And I think all of us that have ever pulled on that jersey are very proud. The Wallabies have a long history, and so does Australia. So I think, it's just a very proud moment. Like I said, it's a special moment. You never know when it's going to be the last time you're out there singing the anthem for your country in front of a big crowd like that. So I think everyone just tries to soak it up and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Dane, I think the Rugby World Cup, which we had a month or 6 weeks of rugby virtually every day, and it seems like a distant memory now. But obviously to play in an event like that, what was your whole sort of take of the experience from when you went into camp and then the time in Japan?
Yeah, it was quite a big build up. I think we had probably almost 2 months before the first game of camps and warm up games, and but the whole experience, the whole team came together. We all pushed each other every single day. We worked so hard. And I suppose that was the disappointment. We came home a little bit disappointed from the whole thing. But a couple of weeks later, after that, started to settle a little bit. On reflection, it was just the most amazing experience. It's something that we'd all built towards for 4 years. Something it had been a dream for all of us to play in, and it was just a well-run event. There were Aussies everywhere. Luckily, it was in Japan, so it was quite close. There's just so much support from back home. The Japanese got behind every single team, and every stadium was sold out. It was just every single game was an experience, and it was just great to be a part of. I feel very lucky to be a part of it.
I suppose, and you mentioned when you think back to the games, and obviously the two in particular were obviously the Welsh game, which probably determined, which sort of path you take, in the knockout stages, and the English game where, for a period, you were certainly very much in it. And looking back on that, there's some of those moments, key moments play out in your mind, if, the what if, and if we'd done this.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest disappointment was that Welsh one. I think we all feel like we let the game slip. We started poorly and gave them the big lead, and you can't do that in an important test match like that. And that kind of determined a lot of our World Cup. And obviously England, a very good team at the moment under Eddie Jones, and ended up sending us packing. But there's definitely a few regrets from that, key moments that we could have handled better, and could have been a very different outcome. We could have ended up in could have played France, who we've had good success against. Could have played South Africa, we've had pretty good success against as well. So, but it is what it is. That's sport, that's how it goes.
Dan, you mentioned earlier about a time in your career where you lost your love for the game. And I suppose you've mentioned sort of some of the lessons. What advice would you say, probably give to our boys when they face, say, difficult times or challenges in their own sport?
Yeah, I think the lesson I didn't learn from that that period where I lost love of the game, it was all about the outcome. Am I getting picked this week? Am I not getting picked? Are we winning? Are we not winning? As opposed to now, I focus a lot more. I spend a lot more time, rather than winging it, I spend a lot more time working to a plan, planning out my week, setting objectives, being very deliberate about trying to just get better every single day. And if you look longer term than just right now, if you can, I've played 13 seasons now. If I could have told my younger self to look longer, to just try and get better every single day for the next 10 years, where are you going to be in 10 years' time? And that's the way I tried to work now, and that's what we're trying to do. A lot of the Rebels is put things in place so guys are trying to plan their weeks out, just being very deliberate and trying on getting something out of every single session to make sure that they're getting better every day, and that all adds up. It accumulates into something. You start to build a lot of momentum, which is very important in sport.
Then a few quick fire questions about your time with the Wallabies. Your best win?
I think my favourite wins, my favourite games are always playing South Africa. Like I said earlier, I dreamed of playing for South Africa, and then was lucky enough to play for Australia. But the first time I played South Africa and heard the South African anthem, was pretty special being out there, and then we were able to beat them. So I think that I've always loved playing the South African games. It's always been pretty special coming from there.
You mentioned earlier, say, the admiration you had for Justin Turner in your Hale days. What about within the Wallabies, who you'd view as the best team player, and why?
Probably two people. I think Nick Phipps is one of them. Probably just the way he'd handle the ups and downs, the disappointments of everyone's got their own ambitions, but whether he was in the team or out of the team, it was always about the team, putting the team first, helping everyone get ready for the weekend's game to try and get the result. And then the other one is David Pocock. He's always driving the standards, always never settling. He was always pushing boys to be better, and that's I think a great way of sort of showing love for the team and wanting for the team to do well. And he would prepare like no one else, so you just trust that he was going to do his job, and he'd have your back, and you could have his back. So those are probably the two that I thought always put the team first.
And the favourite international ground that you've played at?
I think the European ground's pretty special. You know, the spring tour, every ground's sold out, and they're all singing. But my favourite would be Millennium, playing against Wales. We had a lot of good success up at Millennium, and the roof closed there, and the crowd singing and cheering. It's pretty special.
Oh, that's great. Now, just a couple of lighter ones to finish with, mate. We've asked everyone who we've spoken to these two questions. First one's about Birkenstocks. Now, it seems to be a little bit of a craze over here in Perth, and given you've lived most of your life here, I think I know where this answer will go. Do you own them, and what are your views on them?
I don't own them. I quite like them, but they don't look good on me. I've got probably the biggest big toes, and my friends still they just, I don't know if it's out of proportion or what, but they just don't look good on me. I'd probably wear them if they look better.
Okay, and the last one, I'm not sure when you were at Hale, but I think it's been going for quite some time. Tuesday's pie day here, so the boarders and the staff all get pies on Tuesdays, and some of the stuff the boarders do is probably just not appropriate in terms of they lift the lid off the pie, they put sauce in, and they use a spoon. Some use a fork. How does Dane Haylett-Petty eat a meat pie?
I am a traditional meat pie eater, I think. I put a lot of tomato sauce on top and eat it normally, but now I'm going to try and take the roof off and put a bit of sauce in and put the roof back on, I think.
Yeah,
try something different.
Might be one of those things, you've got to know the grass is not greener on the other side sometimes to do it. But no, Dane, on behalf of Steve, myself and all the boys listening to this in the next couple of weeks who are at home, probably a bit lonely, really frustrated they can't play sport, thanks for sharing your journey with us. You know, some great advice there for our fellas, and you know, and there's a lot of kids here that would love to be you, mate. So thanks again, and hopefully, you know, when you move back to Perth in time, that you can stay connected to Hale, and we can see the rest of your career play out on the field and then off the field as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
No worries. Thanks, Dane.
Thanks, Dane.
Cheers.
Cheers.